Welcome back to Her Success Radio. With us today, we have a magical guest. Sarah Drew is the author of Gaia Codex. She's a passionate explorer of culture and consciousness. She has traveled extensively around the world, from the high peaks of Bhutan to the jungles of the Amazon. She's an experienced lecturer. She's taught at the graduate level and at organizations such as Google. Sarah is committed to the awakening of the sacred feminine, the evolution of consciousness, and the protection and revitalization of Mother Earth at this critical turning point in history. Oh, what a gorgeous mission, and what an honor to have you on the show today, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming.
So glad to be here, Valerie.
It was such a pleasure to meet you in person. I love my life. I get to meet most amazing women and have great conversations. And this show is really my virtual living room. That's why I have this show, to invite these amazing women and have these conversations where you are all listeners are invited to participate in. So I hope as you're listening, you're thinking about any questions or comments you may have. And then after the show, you can check out the show notes at drvalerie.com, click on podcast, and you can leave a comment or a question for me and Sarah there. So tell us a little bit about how you discovered this passion for what you do now. I mean, your book, I just want to show the book that has been my companion on my trips lately, and I don't even read hard copy books much because being always on the go, I mostly listen. But this book enchanted me so much I wouldn't let it go. So, and I want to hear and share with our listeners how you discovered this magical gift of storytelling and the passion and the mission that's guiding your life now.
Thank you. I think in so many ways it begins with a deep listening. And, you know, for me, ever since I was a child, there was this sense that, you know, the Mother Earth, the Earth herself, was speaking to us. And I think the book in many ways is really exploration of connection. How are we connected as women to each other? How are we connected to our Mother Earth? How are we connected to our lineages of the past? Which I think in our present culture has been something that many of us as women, and also as men, I would say, but in particular as women, we've lost many of our lineage connections that have been these lines of wisdom into the past that are passed generation to generation. So I felt a deep, both knowing that was something that had been true in other times and places, but also a hunger for that. So the book was really exploration of that, and it developed over many years. I traveled around the world. I went to Tibet. I went to, you know, sacred spots in the Amazon, over also in Europe, and really began to listen to these ancient lineage lines and study with teachers. Studied at UC Berkeley, you know, just reading, but more really the experiential remembrance of who we are as women. And I had this sense of the future, you know, so that there would be this point in time when the Earth herself, the culture itself would start to shake and tumble a bit, and things as we had known them would start to come apart. But in that coming apart, there would be a rising up of something new, and that women who had been silent for generations would start to speak out. And so in many ways, Gaia Codex is written towards this moment that we're in right now.
So do you feel this is happening right now?
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly is. And so many of us are these, you know, carriers of wisdom. And I think that's the thing, is that, you know, we as women, we as human beings, but Gaia Codex speaks mostly to the feminine lineage and to the sacred feminine lineage. we are these holders. And what's wonderful, I think, is when we gather together in mass as women, these wisdom codes are activated within us. And each of us has a separate piece. It's like a diamond with many facets. Each of us has a separate piece to bring into that. And the story is a quote-unquote fictional exploration of that. But it's from the reflection from readers, it speaks to a truth. And I certainly know in my own journey of exploring the material in it, it awakens so many things within me.
I have so many questions about your process, about how this book, what that exploration looked like. And before we go there, I just really want to thank you for this gorgeous reminder that we are all holders of sacred wisdom, that every woman holds her piece, and we're all facets of this diamond. What a gorgeous metaphor.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of Indra's net metaphor in the yogic tradition, where we're all interconnected and our role is reflecting each other's brilliance to each other and being reflected by others. And so it is our divine responsibility to fully shine, to be able to do it for others and allow others to do it, amplifying that light in the world.
Yeah, in Indra's net, I'm glad that you brought it up, because that certainly, when I'd heard the metaphor, but when I read about it in more depth in the Avatamsaka Sutra, which is a Mahayana Buddhist text, and that's really one of the seminal descriptions of holographic reality and Indra's net. It's called the Flower Ornament Scripture. It's 1,000 pages, but it's the Sanskrit is Avatamsaka Sutra, and it is exactly that space, which is the foundational structure, which I had a deep vision of when I was in my 20s, that guides the Gaia Codex.
Wow.
Yeah. So yes. Thank you for that reflection.
It's so juicy. We're going to put a reference to that text in the show notes, so you don't need to scramble and try to remember. And if you feel pulled to go down that rabbit hole, it's a delicious journey. What was your journey like of discovering your own wisdom? What was your awakening like, remembrance?
Yes, such a great question, because I think, each of us, that journey is really, our life becomes that blueprint for our personal awakening. And there's 1,001 ways, 10,001 ways, 1,000,001 ways to do that.
There's always that one more way.
Right? So for myself, at around age 6 or 7, there was a real strong remembrance of myself as a being who had lived many lives, and a connection to the muse, which came in, almost as a shudder when songs or poetry would come to me, and it would be like this, the whole body would start to vibrate. So I had this sense of context that I was part of this larger fabric of life. It was reflected back also to my father at that time, who held that vision. But there was that sense, and then also the sense that this particular incarnation was one where many of us would get together and do something amazing. I had no idea what this was, or how that would be expressed, but that at some point this was a very unique incarnation in the number of souls that would gather, and I was one of those. And so that was childhood, and then there's adolescence, and I really sought, like I said, I did a lot of traveling. I studied religious studies at UC Berkeley. I really sought after, and then I went into technology and, had a tech company creating content in the 90s. But I sought after this experience of awakening, and there's many dark nights of the soul within that. I feel like I've had many deaths and rebirths in this life. And there's some of it, of course, very painful. And some of it, wondering if you can do that next breath. But I have allowed myself to go through those deaths. And sometimes it's meant, the death of what a life materially would look like, and trusting that process. The main through line for me has been awakening and service, and and that went through in my 20s of probably being very selfish too, and very power driven, but that remembrance of why we're here has really been the anchor and the through line that I have kept coming back to and deepening and learning from. It's a continual learning process.
Did I hear you right that your father also held that vision? Can you tell us more about, how your parents were around you at that time, and was that helpful? Was that not helpful? And what was your experience like with that remembrance? Was it scary? Was it natural? Was it what was coming up for you as a child?
I think the way that the container was held, particularly with my father, who is passed at this point, was that it was just the way that life was. We would walk through the woods, and he would say, Sarah, we aren't necessarily of this time and place, and he would speak about the web of life, and we would watch nature expressing itself in the cycles. And so there was a container for that made it feel like it wasn't out of the ordinary. And of course, I was going to school, I was having normal life, but there was this sense that you could have an interior life and share it with some a few people, and then you have whatever your life, your exterior life. And I feel thankful that now the two are really much more merged. And there's these larger conversations happening with so many people that are really sparked and really awake and awakening, and we're remembering and we're discovering and we're exploring together and we're learning,
Yes. There's
from each other.
A lot to be grateful for there, for this awakening consciousness in women and men.
Yeah.
So for a while there, what I'm hearing is that there was kind of a split between the inner and the outer. Can you talk more to that? How that was for you? What did that look like?
Yeah. I think, as a child, I had always a very, and still do, like a very deep interior life, and very rich. Like there wasn't boredom, there's like infinite worlds inside, right?
I know. I don't know what boredom is either.
Yeah.
Surprised when I hear it from people. Can you explain to me what that is?
Yeah. So it's, and I think over time, as I went out into the world and stuff, I met more individuals, more beings who there was deep resonance, and that the inner world, you find a universality in it, and you can share it with others, and then it becomes part of the external world. And I think when new culture is being birthed, so much of what we're doing is collectively bringing in what has maybe been experienced in the original or the dream world, or on a spiritual, quote unquote, plane, different planes of consciousness, we're help bringing that collectively to life onto this beautiful planet Earth and anchoring it and helping create something new that hopefully, again, with me, it's like I feel driven by what is nourishing to all beings. It's like the Buddhist precept, how can we be in service so that all beings are awakened? And, maybe that takes lifetimes. Maybe we can spark that, within one lifetime, but that's a deep service for that, a deep dedication to that service.
That is so beautiful. And I love what you said about the inner life being universal.
Yeah.
There are no the divides, the artificial divides that were constructed in the outer, quote unquote, reality in the inner life. It doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Have you always had this service orientation in how you approached work, career, business?
No, I would say during my 20s, I'm an Aries.
Me too.
So,
I hear you, sister.
yeah, I think we talked about that, right? So I was and I'm still very driven, but I would say that my first expression, even though I had this sense of being a soul who remembered a lot of the precepts, I'd say during my 20s I was very ego-driven and just driven. I just really felt like I had to accomplish a lot, and it ended up maybe because of my clumsiness to be centered a lot around the ego, and that wasn't my path. So then, of course, there's a crash and a death, a metaphorical death, but a soul death that helps soften the edges. So no, I had my younger self, I think, was very, it was, the languaging was cased in the service to this collective awakening, but the actions and the sensitivities were much more ego driven. And so that subtlety of kind of untangling those aspects and that differentiation, has been part of my path's learning. And of course, it's different with each person. We have different curricula that we're here to learn. Right?
We do. I love referring to our journey as life's curriculum too. It's just I find it alleviates a lot of the maybe beating yourself up for quote unquote mistakes, and just seeing it. Okay, thank you for this learning. Thank you for that learning.
Yeah.
And of course, it takes. It takes exposure to this different frame. It takes teachings, takes guides, takes community. Has it been your experience too? What was your learning like, in addition to the experiential, in terms of teachers, guides?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to have many mentors and teachers. I think if you, in the back of my book, I kind of go exuberant about all the different people, souls, just wonderful inspirations along the way. And sometimes they're a conversation that we have, a long conversation in a cafe, somewhere on the planet, a couple of hours that can be life-changing and particularly seminal at certain points of life.
Yes.
And other times they are people that are really part of our pod, and they're there. I had some great teachers at UC Berkeley. I've been fortunate to have some spiritual teachers. In reference, I have my two teachers from Bhutan who have been very seminal to me in terms of just grounding the deeper practices. And I was very open. I mean, I think my sense in terms of spiritual practice, I'm very open, but I've just gravitated towards the ones. And then there's relationships too that I think, some of those more difficult interpersonal relationships that are really some of our greatest spiritual teachers as well, right? How do we deal with the externalization of shadow, our shadow, in a relationship with someone else, and how do we metabolize that and heal it, not only for ourselves, but as an offering for all beings. It's like as we go through some of these painful places where, can I even feel my heart with this person? Maybe it's a familial relationship or something, right? But over time we can start to metabolize it and just do that, offer it at the goddess's feet or whoever your deity or non-deity of worship, or to Mother Earth. And
I love the embodied process that you're describing, metabolizing. Metabolizing. That's what the earth does. She metabolizes, right? As we move through the seasons, she metabolizes what needs to be transformed and gives life to new growth. A beautiful thing. And it's a different aspect of IndrasNet that we reflect to each other, not only the light, but we reflect to each other that shadow. And when we, I love shadow work, and I bring it in all the work that I do in my courses with my clients, with myself every day. Whenever you're triggered, this is for our listeners in case you're not very familiar with what that's about. Whenever you're triggered by someone, either they really piss you off, or you just get so infatuated with them, it's something that you need to fully own in yourself, and clean it up and bring it to the light and metabolize, right? As you say, I love this word. In moving into wholeness.
I think the shadow work is so, at least I can only speak for myself, but, it's there. If we have charge, or if we're triggered, then in my experience is something that we can work on, because it's something that is, as you were saying, is not fully integrated within our own being. And the great thing about life is you get lots of chances to do that.
It is so wonderful. Relationships are particularly rich in that. Any relationships, familial relationships are certainly loaded. And I love looking at it from the when I am in my, on a good day, on a good moment, because it's like a day has a lot of moments, but really seeing it as a gift. Oh, I got triggered. Oh, what a gift. Thank you. And I noticed that whoever triggers me the most in the room, I need to somehow connect with that person, because they have so much to teach me, and they end up becoming my close friend. We end up working together. It's really magical following the breadcrumbs, as opposed to, I can't stand her. Who does she think she is? Let me lean in and find out what it is about her that I need to look at in me, and what a gift that is. It takes skills, though. It takes some time. It's not just like an intellectual understanding. It just takes that certain robustness in your own nervous system, I find. What do you think?
I mean, and it's also, I think, it's a fine line there too, between, using the skills of discernment.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And boundaries. And again, my teachers Lama Pema and Rinpoche Sewang, it was wonderful to watch them, just very open and loving. But I could also see when discernment was needed, it was just like it was so clear, And yeah, I think it's okay to also know when something or a relationship, right, or an interaction is not ours, because that's that's following that navigational path that moves us through life. Those times when, you have a choice. Maybe it's a career choice. Maybe it's moving somewhere. Maybe it's whether or not you should go to some events or something. And I always just tune into my stomach, and if I get a no, or if I get a no to, then I follow that. And it's not logical, but that guides us, right?
Yeah.
I think that combination of discernment but open heart, it's a paradox.
Yeah.
And I loved what you said too about it, just that leading into the uncomfortable places.
I love this. Thank you for bringing this to light. I'm a big fan of using intuition for guidance. It's so elegant. It's so binary. It's a clear yes or a clear no. There is no fluff. There is no rationalization. But what if? Because I find that drains us so much.
Yeah.
And when it's just clear, it's efficient. I love efficiency. I'm an Aries. I love fast action and fast decision making. That's something that I love supporting women and getting in touch with that place where they don't doubt themselves and can just go by that intuitive guidance, by that inner wisdom.
Yeah, and being okay with our mistakes, right?
Yeah.
There's in some ways there's no wrong way, and when we do make. To me, what's interesting in terms of karma is like if we keep being presented the same lesson over and over again, that's for us. And then at some point we actually transmute it, and it changes. But I think that gentleness when we fail, or that gentleness when we get into a relationship that was not the right, that's so important. Just really to see what we can learn so we don't do it the next time, but really to be with our inner child, be gentle with that part of ourselves.
Yeah, thank you for these words. I work with high achieving women, being one of them. I feel the pain, and we are our own harshest critics unless we work with that part. And even that, it's not like it completely goes away, or like it takes its time. And that same quality that allows us to achieve a lot in life, that same drive, that same passion, that same drive undercuts us when it comes to failure, it comes to mistakes. It really lands so hard because we're so programmed we're so praised for our achievement, our brilliance, right? So when we quote unquote fail, it's like our identity gets fractured, and it's so extremely painful until we begin to lean into that softening, until we begin to heal that cultural programming, familial programming, until we begin to let go of these parts of our identity that actually imprison us, and just roll with that life force that channels through us. And however that expresses in the world, knowing that that's exactly the way that's appropriate right now, be it quote unquote success, failure, whatever, right, wherever on the spectrum.
I love what you just said, and it reminds me of, I love Buckminster Fuller's idea that there's the trim tab, right? And on a ship, there's actually a very small it looks like a little rudder, but that's actually how you can help navigate the ship itself. And so you do these little movements of adjustment to help keep the ship on its course. And, we get off course, but we can adjust back in. We just, the failures, I think they can be very painful, going back to what I was describing, like my own personal journey in my 20s. Like to the ego, they're very painful, right? Because identity is shattered. But as we go deeper, and this is one of the things in Gaia Codex, Lila Sophia, without giving too much of the book apart, there's this thing called the Metamorphosis Project, right? And there's this experience of her taking on the identity of many different women. And part of that transmission, besides our bioresonance and bioadaptability and evolution as the human species, is also, how fluid can we be with our identity, with the connective tissue of empathy.
The connective tissue of empathy.
Yeah.
Wow. Major goosebumps. This is just so juicy, so luscious, so well put. And yes, this is such a gorgeous frame, the metamorphosis, that ability to really, through your body, have these different experiences. And I really feel that, your book is so timely. There is this deep sense of recognition of the truth while reading the book. And even if we haven't framed it as such, like there's a lot of guidance. You put things into words that I believe that every woman has felt at some point, maybe when she was little, maybe in her daydreams, maybe in her dreams. But we're all connected to that wisdom and knowing. And your book kind of serves it as this delicious dish, and enjoy it. It's yours. It's true. Accept it, reawaken it, live into it. It's really delicious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for that gorgeous offering.
Thank you. And one of the things I've really enjoyed with the book is I really see it as open source code. We're all, I continue to learn what the book holds through the eyes and through the experiences of the many women reading it. And it's a living thing, and we're each this wisdom, really, which is our collective wisdom as women on the planet, our deep-rooted wisdom and knowing, and our dreaming, as we're really women at this time. As we rise up, we're starting to dream collectively the future in a way that we've probably been behind the scenes, weaving, shaping humanity, but now our voices are being unleashed en masse. And we can start to, and I pray for our guidance to not necessarily fall into the energetics of divisionism, but that we can supersede, and that the feminine principle, the part of ourselves as human beings, can help really create a next awakening for humanity that really honors life and honors all forms of life.
Yeah, so beautifully put. And I want to bring it into the very tangible right now for our listeners, right? So if a woman listening right now feeling similarly to how I'm feeling and wants to know, well, how do I do that? Like, how do I get in touch with my wisdom, with my unique piece in that puzzle? How do I know for sure what that is, and how to, what I'm entrusted with, and how to contribute it to the larger fabric?
I love, because you're guiding so many women on that journey.
And I'm tickled to hear what you have to say, because like I've been obviously, following the breadcrumbs, the cake crumbs of like my own unfolding. And every time I hear something new, like I remain so open source, right? I know I learn from every conversation.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, that's just, every moment is the entry point. And I think, that place, going back to how we started, that deep listening, and, to be able to look at our life, no matter what we're doing. And maybe we're in something where life at the moment feels like a struggle, right? It's the job or our familial circumstances or our, ultimately, where we feel that we're at. Still, we can take that. It doesn't need to be someplace else. And maybe your life force will say, actually, it does need to be physically someplace else. But you don't have to wait till tomorrow to start. We can start right now, at any moment.
What do you mean by deep listening? How does one listen deeply?
For me, it's like if I'm... it's engaging with life, if it's cold, feeling the sensation of cold, if I'm riding the subway, really, instead of just tuning out and, be engaging in what is this like? What are the smells? Maybe they're not good smells, or what is happening with, what is this person? Do I talk with them or just wonder what is their life like, right? And just really enjoying beauty when it comes to us. The sun rises every day, it's, there's 1,001 exquisite sunsets for us to enjoy, and the moon rises, these constants that are part of our terrestrial life. The seasons change. Take that in. Our children, if we have them, grow. Each day is different, right? Really enjoy our food as we're eating it. I meditate, every morning, and it doesn't have to be for a lot. It can be for 10 minutes. It can be for, I do try to do 20, but that can set our anchor, our navigation system on its route.
I love it. I love the emphasis on pleasure that you bring, and this is a big part of what's central to my work. That reclamation of pleasure in action, in creating something in the world, and taking back the real success from the I guess the vignettes of success, what it's supposed to look like, but taking back that real life, the real good life, the real juice. And that's exactly what you're describing, and enjoying every moment, the changing seasons, the changing look in our children's eyes, and the sunsets and the moon rising, and just being in the subway, like really every experience, whether or not it's quote unquote pleasurable or not, but really sinking into it, allowing yourself to be fully present with it. It is just it just enriches our life and makes us, and this is me connecting the dots, so tell me if I'm on track or not, but how it connects with deep listening makes us a clearer channel, because it gets the mind chatter out of the way. When we're in pleasure, we're relaxed. And when we're relaxed, we are open, we are expansive, we are receptive.
Yeah, I love how you're speaking to that difference between contraction and expansion. And, in the Shaivite tradition, in the Kashmiri Shaivite tradition, they talk, a lot of the practice is around this expansion and contraction in ourself and in the universe. And
how feminine is that?
right? On so many levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, to tune into that, I know if I contract, my body can go into what will seem like a panic state, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that expansiveness that you're describing, that pleasurable aspect, and this thing of where pleasure is our, and I know this is very deep to your stream and roots, but pleasure is our birthright as women. We, and it doesn't mean that we don't feel suffering or sorrow within a life, but pleasure, not where we're seeking it to as a fix, but there's this place of actually that comes with a sense of equilibrium, where it's almost like a field of pleasure that can be created, that comes over time, so that things can come towards us, and we aren't, again, this metabolizing or synergizing, we can take it in, and our heart just expands wider and wider to take more and more in. As I'm doing this, of course, I'm thinking of the Dalai Lama, who my husband and I had the chance to see. He was executive producing Mickey Lemley's film, The Last Dalai Lama. So we were in Dharamsala, and there were 6 of us in the room for an hour and a half, which was such a gift.
What a divine experience.
And he's so joyful, he's just, he's like, he's radiating joy and laughter and humor, and the field is one of joy. And it's not, we were talking, of course, of serious topics about the world and about Tibet, and you felt his empathy and his sorrow and his gravitas, but there was that joy which I've found with great teachers, and at least I've practiced mostly Buddhism, and that equanimity is it heals us.
How beautiful. And I have to ask you, how did you get to be in a room of 6 people with the Dalai Lama for an hour and a half? How did you manifest that?
Well, it is funny, right? My dad died in 2014, and very quickly when it happened. And when he, like a month and a half before he died, he goes, "Sarah," he goes, have you met the Dalai Lama yet?" And I go, I've gone to see him. And he goes, he goes, because he did that. And then kind of fast forward a year and a half, and at that point my husband-to-be, but it was executive producing the Mickey Lemley's film on the last Dalai Lama, which is out, which I highly recommend seeing. It's a beautiful film. And
we'll put a reference in the show notes.
Thank you. And he goes, do you want to go to Dharamsala? Mickey's invited us, and we'll have an audience with His Holiness. And so we flew to Dharamsala and got to be with him. And, I told Dal, who is my husband, I go, to me, this is better than diamonds. I go, I'm such an exquisite experience.
Well, and I'm just reveling in this, the juiciness of this experience and how it came to be, because it came to be through following the path for you, for your husband, doing what you're here to do, being of service.
Yeah.
And the magic that comes with that.
Yeah, thank you for underlying. I think at some points, as, that decision sometimes to do from what and I know that you work with so many women on this, of what you feel you should be doing to what is really your soul's truth. And follow your soul's truth, even when it's even when it goes like, how am I going to be able to do this, or everybody else around you is saying it's crazy, or whatever that is. For some of us in particular, but I think in truth for most human beings, if we dig deep enough, we have to do that. For me, I had to, else I would die.
Yes.
I felt it as a physical sickness if at those points when I was off track, or as the book became more present to where it really needed to be written, I had to do it, else I felt that I would die. It was a physical pain, a heaviness.
Wow. Follow your soul's truth. That is so powerful. And is that what you're referring to, a part of what you're referring to when you're speaking to this death and rebirth journey? Your health being affected and you being at the crossroads. Okay, am I going to step into my soul's truth, or am I going to choose a different way? But that would mean that, physically I would be unwell.
Yeah, I think it can certainly take physical symptoms. And it's interesting with time. I mean, right now I'm going to be 53 this year, which...
I love the word chronologically. That's accurate.
Yeah. But what's interesting about this stage, one of the many things, is I'm finding you can see, like I went back to where I grew up, and you see people who chose, maybe it is their soul's calling, certainly, but maybe didn't follow some of those. You can see the effect of when dreams aren't followed, and you can see when they are. And still, there's no judgment either way. People are we're all where we're at any moment.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I agree with you. There is no judgment, and that's one of the reasons I love the Buddhist philosophy and psychology, where they don't have the concept of sin or something like that. There's no such thing. There are consequences. Every choice has consequences, and they are what they are. You kind of, it's the ultimate accountability, responsibility, and power too, because at any point we have this freedom to choose. Okay, I'm going to work on this book. I'm going to pursue this dream. Even though my environment disagrees, I'm going to do what feels right, my soul's truth. And this is a big pain point for women I work with, and myself. I don't know if you would relate to that too. Outgrowing our environments quickly, be it elementary school or high school, or then any like work peer environment, because very quickly you begin to understand that, oh my gosh, I'm an outlier. I'm setting my sights further than most people in my environment. And again, there's no judgment, but knowing that is your truth, and that does come with difficult choices that sometimes will feel that temporarily you might feel more lonely, but then you find your tribe again, and you find your tribe again. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I think that's beautifully put. I know in my 20s, in my teens, I started to travel around the world, in my late teens, South America and Tibet for the first time. And I would meet people at that point. It was I still have this experience meeting people, but it was so poignant at that point, coming out of the suburbs of San Diego in Southern California. And I would meet people who I just felt like the world exploded open, and a new world. It's just, I could actually feel like I'd been in a shell and it exploded open when I would meet these different people that were part of my extended tribe over time, right? And the joy of that. And I think, it's the heroine's journey, the hero's journey, right? That point when you are in the woods and you are seemingly alone, but you're refining your inner soul's gold, your inner tuning, and then you become a beacon that also attracts. I'm so thankful through the Gaia Codex. There's just all these amazing, amazing women and men as well that reach out and tell their stories, and it's so there's a universality to this journey, and whatever is the story itself can be taken in 1,001 ways, but it's our humanity.
Yes.
and I feel like one of the greatest treasures of my life at this point at 53 years is the extraordinary friends and kinship and allies and souls that I've got to meet and have cherished relationships with. This is the richness that
This is the richness.
Yeah.
That word was resonating, coming into my field too, the richness of life that creates. And I'm wondering, Sarah, you've accomplished a lot in your life, both in your inner work, your stepping into your destiny, and what you have created in the outer reality. What are you setting your sights on? What's next for you both in the inner and outer? What do you wish you could master at this point? Right? What is your next growth edge?
Yeah, and in some ways I'm at 53, almost 53 in March. I'm starting to feel. In some ways, I've always felt a closeness to mortality, but there's this other, because of the physical body, you start to feel like, this remembrance that we humans have, that our time is limited. It could be 10 more years, it could be 20, it could be 30, maybe it's 40, or maybe it's 50, maybe I'll be 100 in this incarnation, but there is a finite to a physical incarnation, which brings everything more into the present moment. How time is spent, how energy is spent, looking at the causal relationships, where our actions, karma really is how our actions affect this web. So you see, when we put something out, it has effect, it ripples out, good or bad. So, continuing hopefully to be more present with that. I have a new book that's percolating. I'm starting to work on, and then we're with my producing partner Jane Charles. We're developing Gaia Codex for a scripted episodic television series.
Oh, that will be so delightful and so timely.
Yeah, thank you. So this feels, we've been in development over the last year, and this feels like the year for that. So, and we have this, with my husband, we have this wonderful 240 acres up in upstate New York, and we're in the city as well. So there's a lot with this land here. It seems like there's creation and community that's happening there organically. And that sounds very personal, but there's something about how the consciousness so many of us are feeling are starting to root in the land. I think I'll be teaching a lot more. I'm really feeling that coming up. I haven't forced it. I do a lot like this co-teaching, but I feel that there's a body of work. I've just been letting it percolate with its time,
This is so beautiful and so feminine.
Yeah. And across probably being at Aries, I've given you a big list.
Oh, I feel you, sister. I just want to hold your book in my hands again. This is, I don't know if you can see it. Well, those who are watching us on video, you can find us. By the way, where you can find us if you're listening on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, you can find show notes at drvalerie.com. Click on podcast, and then you'll see the video there. You'll see our show notes, and you'll see some surprise gifts from me and our guests. Well, always full of surprises, and we'll support you in getting into a rabbit hole in the deeper exploration of your soul's truth. If our conversation spoke to you today, I hope you share it with your sisters and brothers who are also on this path, or whose souls are ready to get on this journey. And thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing this beautiful wisdom with us today. This is gorgeous, and I highly recommend the book, Gaia Codex. It will speak to your soul in a language that bypasses the conscious mind. It just speaks soul. It speaks body. It speaks inner, deep, ancient knowing in an exquisite way. You'll enjoy it deeply. If you're anything like me.
Thank you so much, Valerie. It's wonderful, and just sending love and blessings to all who are listening, and holding you and holding with you for your highest aspirations.
Thank you, Goddess. Hey, I have a special announcement for you. This wonderful book that captured my heart and soul from Sarah Drew, who I'm sure will capture your heart and soul in this interview you're about to listen to. I would love to share it with you. If you enjoy this episode, I encourage you to share it on social and tag the Dr. Valerie on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And my team and I will keep an eye on your shares. And at the end of the week, we will pick one of you to receive this book in the mail as a gift from us. So go to, if you're not already on this page, go to hersuccessradio.com, find Sarah's episode, and in the show notes you'll have all the rules of engagement around this social sharing, and how you'll be able to receive your book. And I just thank you so much for being here. As women, that's how we add value and spread value in the world, by sharing the good that we find. So I'm so happy to be sharing with you the good that I find, these amazing guests and their amazing books and products. And thank you so much for sharing with women you know. And thank you for being here. Thank you for being Her Success Revolutionary. Enjoy the show, and here is to your success.